My name is Chris, and this happened when I was 22, during a time when life still felt pretty simple and predictable. I was living in a house my parents owned, a kind of modified mother-daughter setup. It wasn't fancy, but it worked. I had the entire upstairs to myself, while my older brother Tom lived downstairs. The arrangement gave us just enough separation to feel independent, but still close enough that we could check in on each other whenever we needed. Upstairs was basically one large open space. The living room, kitchen, and dining area all blended together, with only furniture marking the boundaries between them. A short hallway led off from that main area, connecting to a small bathroom, a spare bedroom I had turned into a massive walk-in closet, and my own bedroom at the very end. It felt comfortable in a minimalist kind of way, open, quiet, and easy to maintain. Tom's space downstairs had its own entrance, so we rarely crossed paths unless we planned to. There was also an interior door connecting both floors, which we kept unlocked most of the time. It made things convenient. If one of us needed something, we didn't have to go outside. We could just walk through the house. One week, Tom left for Mexico with his fiancée. He'd been planning the trip for months, and I was genuinely happy for him. It also meant I had the entire house to myself for the first time. At first, it felt like a bonus. More space, more quiet, no interruptions. The night everything happened started off completely normal. I got home around 7 in the evening, kicked off my shoes, and turned on the TV for background noise. I decided to cook something simple, chicken and rice, nothing that required much effort. The kind of meal you can make half distracted while watching whatever happens to be on. Everything felt routine, familiar, safe. While I was cleaning up after dinner, I heard a sound from downstairs. It wasn't loud, just a single dull thud. I paused, dish in hand, and listened. It was the kind of noise that could easily be dismissed. Something shifting, maybe a pipe knocking, maybe something settling. The downstairs had been empty for several days, so my brain immediately jumped to harmless explanations. Still, something about it didn't sit right. I muted the TV and stood there waiting. The silence that followed stretched longer than I expected. Nothing else happened. After a moment, I told myself I was being paranoid. But the uneasiness didn't go away, so I decided to check. The door leading downstairs was already open. I walked down slowly, flipping on lights as I went. I checked every room. Tom's living room, his kitchen, his bedroom, even the bathroom. Everything looked exactly the way it should have. Nothing out of place, nothing disturbed. I stood there for a second, almost expecting something to move, but nothing did. So I went back upstairs, finished cleaning, and settled onto the couch to watch TV for a while. Eventually, I started to feel tired and decided to call it a night. I turned everything off, went to my room, and got into bed. Sleep came quickly, at least at first. I don't know how long I had been asleep when it happened, but I woke up suddenly to the sound of music. It wasn't subtle. It was loud enough to pull me out of sleep instantly. For a second, I just lay there, confused, trying to figure out what I was hearing. Then I realized it was coming from the living room, specifically from my Amazon Alexa sitting on the kitchen counter. The song was unfamiliar, slow, instrumental. There was something off about it. Something dark and unsettling in the tone. Half annoyed, half disoriented, I called out from my bed, "Alexa, stop!" No response. I said it again, louder this time. Still nothing. Frustrated, I got out of bed and walked into the hallway. "Alexa, stop!" I said sharply. The music cut off immediately. I stood there for a second, staring at the device. It didn't make sense, but it also didn't feel like a big deal. Devices glitch all the time. That's what I told myself. I went back to bed. A few minutes later, just as I was drifting off again, I heard the Alexa speak. "Sorry, I didn't quite get that. I'm having trouble understanding." That annoyed me more than anything else. I got up again, walked into the living room, and unplugged it from the wall. Completely. No power, no problem. That should have been the end of it. I went back to my room and fell asleep quickly. Then I woke up again. The music was playing. Loud, clear. The same kind of eerie instrumental sound as before. For a moment, I just lay there, frozen, trying to process what I was hearing. Then it hit me. I had unplugged the Alexa. There was no way it should have been on. I got out of bed immediately, my heart starting to race. This time I walked down the hallway slowly. Something didn't feel right anymore. As I got closer, I called out, "Alexa, stop!" The music stopped instantly. I stepped into the living room and looked at the counter. The Alexa was plugged back into the wall. I just stared at it. I knew I had unplugged it. I could picture myself doing it, pulling the cord out, watching it go dark. There was no confusion there. That was the moment the situation stopped feeling like a glitch and started feeling wrong. Deeply wrong. I didn't check anything else. I didn't look around the house. I didn't go downstairs. I turned and went straight back to my bedroom, closed the door and locked it. Then I grabbed a chair and wedged it under the handle. My hands were shaking as I picked up my phone and texted Tom, asking if he had come back early to mess with me. Even as I typed it, I knew how unlikely that was. Then I saw his location, Mexico. That sinking feeling hit me hard. I sat on the floor with my back against the door, listening. The house was completely silent at first. No footsteps, no movement, just quiet. I stayed like that for about 10 minutes, straining to hear anything. Then I heard it. A whisper. It came from the living room, soft but clear enough. "Alexa, play." The rest of the words were too faint to make out. My entire body went cold. Before I could even react, the Alexa responded. Music started blasting again. That was it. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. I didn't try to stay quiet. I didn't try to hide. I started yelling, telling whoever was out there that I was calling the police, telling them to get out. I don't even know why I did that. I wasn't thinking about catching them. I just wanted them gone. The music was so loud I couldn't hear anything else. I had no idea if the person was still there or if they had already left. When the operator answered, I told them everything as fast as I could, that someone was in my house, that I could hear them. Eventually, the song ended. From inside my room, I yelled, "Alexa, stop!" Silence. A few minutes later, the police arrived. I stayed locked in my room until I heard them inside, calling my name. When I came out, I explained everything, every detail, no matter how crazy it sounded. They checked the entire upstairs. Then they went downstairs. When they came back, they said there was no one in the house. I didn't know how to feel about that. Relieved, but also unsettled. Because if someone had been there, it meant they had gotten away. One of the officers told me something that stuck with me. My front door had been wide open when they arrived. I knew for a fact I had locked it. At the very least, I had closed it. That meant whoever was inside had left through there. But it didn't explain how they got in. After they left, I locked every door I could and didn't sleep much the rest of the night. The next day, one thought kept replaying in my mind. Tom's apartment downstairs had been empty for days. What if someone had been staying there? What if they had been in the house the whole time and only came upstairs that night? That idea bothered me more than anything else. I stayed at a friend's place the next night. When Tom came back 2 days later, I told him everything. At first, he thought I was joking, until I showed him proof that the police had been there. We searched the house together, top to bottom. We didn't find anything obvious. Still, we didn't take any chances. The first thing we did was install cameras, outside, inside, near both entrances. Nothing like that ever happened again. Eventually, our parents decided to rent the house out, and we moved into our own place. Honestly, I was relieved. Because once something like that happens, it doesn't stay in the past. It sticks to the place. And no matter how normal things seem afterward, you can't shake the feeling that one night, something was there, and you were never really alone. Last fall, I was sent to a small town in northern Pennsylvania for work. I do commercial refrigeration repair, and at the time my company was short on technicians, so I was being sent all over to cover jobs in smaller, quieter places. This town felt off the second I arrived. It wasn't just that it was quiet, it felt empty, like life had slowly drained out of it. Most of the storefronts were closed by the time I got there, and the few that were open looked like they were barely holding on. I was scheduled to stay for 3 nights while I worked on a set of failing walk-in freezers at an older family-owned supermarket. My company booked me into a motel just outside town. It was the kind of place where all the doors faced the parking lot, one long row of rooms under a flickering strip of lights. There couldn't have been more than a dozen rooms total, and only a handful of cars were parked when I pulled in. I checked in around 7 p.m. The office smelled like stale coffee and cleaning chemicals. The woman behind the counter looked to be in her 60s. She was polite, but distracted. While I was signing the paperwork, I noticed she kept glancing past me through the window toward the parking lot, like she was expecting someone or watching for them. When she handed me the key, she gave me a strange piece of advice. She said, "If anyone knocks on your door at night, don't answer it unless it's me or the owner." She said it casually, like it was a normal thing to tell a guest. Then she added, "And if you hear anything outside, just call the office. Don't go out there." It caught me off guard. I asked if the area was dangerous. She just shrugged and said there were some drifters around who liked to bother guests. I didn't think much of it at the time. I was tired from driving and just wanted to eat and sleep. My room was near the far end of the building, second to last. It was clean enough, but old. There were cigarette burns on the dresser, stains in the carpet that didn't quite come out, and a faint smell of something damp in the air. I dropped my bag, grabbed food from a gas station down the road, and came back around 8. That's when I first noticed the truck. It was an older, dark green pickup parked a couple spaces away from mine. The engine was running, but the headlights were off. Someone was sitting inside, but I couldn't see their face clearly. What stuck with me was how still they were. Both hands on the wheel, not moving, not even turning their head when I walked past. It felt wrong. I told myself they were just waiting for someone and went inside. The next couple hours were uneventful. I ate, watched videos on my phone, and tried to unwind. Around 10:30, I took a shower and got into bed. Maybe 20 minutes later, I heard footsteps outside my room. That didn't bother me at first. Other guests were staying there. But the footsteps stopped right outside my door. I waited, expecting a key in the lock or a knock on the neighboring room. Nothing happened. Just silence. After about 15 seconds, the footsteps continued, moving away. Then a minute later, they came back again, slower this time, and stopped right outside my door again. Still no knock, still nothing. Then they walked away. I got up and checked through the peephole, but the walkway was empty. I figured it was someone drunk or confused about their room and tried to ignore it. A little after 11, I was drifting off when someone knocked. 2 slow, deliberate knocks. I froze. They knocked again, same rhythm. I got up quietly and looked through the peephole. No one. The walkway was empty. That's when I felt the first real drop in my stomach. I double-checked the lock, then noticed something else. The curtain by the window had shifted slightly. Not enough to see out, just enough to realize someone might be able to see in. I closed it completely and turned off the lamp. Around midnight, I heard something else. A faint, metallic scraping sound near the door. I stepped closer and looked through the peephole again. This time I saw someone. They were crouched low, just below the line of sight. I could only see the top of a dark baseball cap and part of their shoulder. They stayed there for a few seconds, then suddenly stood up and moved away quickly. I heard footsteps heading toward the far end of the building. That's when I called the front desk. The woman answered, sounding annoyed at first. But when I told her someone had been crouched outside my door, her tone changed instantly. She asked if I had opened the door. I told her no. She told me to stay inside. A couple minutes later, headlights passed across my window as someone drove slowly through the lot. Then it went quiet again. They called back and said nobody was there anymore. I barely slept that night. Around 5:15 a.m., I woke up to the sound of my truck alarm going off. I rushed to the window and peeked through the curtain. A man was standing at my truck with the driver's door half open. He was tall, wearing a dark jacket and hat. His back was turned to me. Then, like he felt me watching, he turned his head slightly toward my room. Even from that distance, it felt like he was looking directly at me. He shut the door and walked off quickly toward the road behind the motel. I called 911. The police showed up about 15 minutes later. They didn't find anything missing from my truck, but there were fresh marks on the door handle. One officer asked if I was sure I had locked it. I knew I had. The older officer took things more seriously. When I told him about the knocking and the person crouching outside my door, he listened carefully. Before leaving, he told me if anything else happened, I should not open the door for any reason. I should have left that morning, but I didn't. I worked all day and came back that evening around 6:30. It was already dark. I parked under the brightest light and carried everything inside in one trip. The woman at the desk asked if I was okay. I told her I hadn't slept. She hesitated, then offered to move me to a room near the office. When I asked why she hadn't offered that before, she said something I still think about. She said, "It usually doesn't happen 2 nights in a row." That made everything worse. Around 8 p.m., I saw the same green pickup again. It drove slowly through the lot, then parked at the far end with the lights off. I stayed inside. Around 11, I heard slow footsteps again, then a soft tap on the window. I didn't move. Another tap. Then something dragged down the glass. Slow, intentional. I lay there frozen, knowing someone was standing inches away from me. Then I heard the bathroom window start to move. It was opening. I ran and shoved it shut just as something on the other side pushed back once. That was it. I called 911 immediately. While I was on the phone, I heard movement next door. The empty room beside mine had been opened. Not like a guest checking in, quiet, careful movement. Then a hard knock on the wall between us, like someone testing it. The police arrived minutes later. Whoever was outside ran. This time they found evidence. The window screen had been removed. There were pry marks on my truck and the empty room next door. Before I left, I found something under the bed, a torn piece of newspaper. On the back, someone had written my room number and my license plate. That's when I realized. They hadn't just found me that night. They had been watching. I packed everything and left before 1 a.m. I never went back. And I don't stay in roadside motels anymore. Because sometimes you're not just passing through a town. Sometimes something in that town notices you first. This happened last summer, when my girlfriend and I finally took our first real trip together. Up until then, she had only joined me on a family vacation once, but that didn't really count. This time it was just the two of us. No parents, no schedules, no obligations. It felt like a big step in our relationship, something we had both been looking forward to for a long time. For privacy's sake, I'll call my girlfriend Vanessa. One thing about her that's important to understand is that she always tells me I'm too nice for my own good. According to her, there's a difference between being polite and being the kind of overly friendly person who treats strangers like lifelong friends. I've always seen it as a strength, but she's warned me more than once that it could get me into trouble. At the time, I didn't take that seriously enough. We were driving down to Ocean City, Maryland, a place I used to visit with my family when I was younger. It's a typical beach town. Condos, hotels, restaurants, all lined up along the ocean. About 20 minutes away from our condo, I pulled into a gas station to fill up and grab some drinks. While I was inside, a guy accidentally bumped into me. He immediately started apologizing, almost excessively. I brushed it off and told him it was no big deal. He introduced himself as Henry. He looked like someone you'd trust instantly, well put together, confident, friendly. He made direct eye contact when he spoke, smiled easily, and carried himself in a way that made you feel comfortable. We ended up chatting in line for a couple minutes. I told him we were heading to Ocean City, and his whole face lit up. He said he and his girlfriend were heading there too. When I mentioned the condo we were staying at, he said he thought he knew exactly where it was and believed they were staying nearby. That coincidence excited me more than it probably should have. Before I even thought twice, we exchanged numbers. I told him we should meet up sometime during the week, maybe grab drinks or hang out on the beach. We gave each other a quick hug and went our separate ways. When I got back to the car, Vanessa immediately knew I had made a new friend. I told her what happened and she just rolled her eyes. She didn't say much at the time, but I could tell she wasn't thrilled. We got to the condo later that afternoon, settled in, and spent a quiet evening relaxing. Our room was on the 5th floor with a balcony overlooking the ocean. It felt perfect, peaceful, exactly what we needed. The next morning we went down to the beach early. We liked getting there before the crowds, sitting with coffee and just enjoying the calm. A few hours in, I heard someone call my name. I turned around and there was Henry, waving like we were already close friends. Behind him was a woman he introduced as Sarah. Something about her immediately felt off. While Henry was energetic and engaging, she was the complete opposite. She wore oversized sunglasses, a wide-brimmed hat, long sleeves, and leggings, completely out of place for the beach. She barely spoke, just gave a quick wave and a forced smile. She also carried a large tote bag that looked oddly empty. It was like she didn't want to be there at all. Henry asked if they could join us, and of course I said yes. They didn't bring chairs or towels. He just sat in the sand, and Sarah stood there awkwardly until I offered her my chair. She hesitated, then accepted. Henry told us they were staying in the building right next to ours. That should have been a red flag, but instead, I thought it was an incredible coincidence. We hung out for about an hour before heading back upstairs. Before we left, Henry kept insisting we all go out for drinks that night. I told him I'd let him know. As soon as we got back to the room, Vanessa started voicing her concerns. She said Henry felt fake, like he was mirroring my personality too much. She also pointed out how strange Sarah was, complaining about the sun while willingly coming to the beach with no gear. The more she talked, the more it made sense. I agreed not to reach out to Henry again. I didn't want to ruin the trip. That night I was out on the balcony smoking a cigar when I thought I saw Sarah down on the beach. She was alone, dressed the exact same way as before. It was late, and something about that didn't sit right with me. I brushed it off and went inside. As I was checking the door before bed, I thought I heard voices outside. That wasn't unusual, but the voices sounded like they were right outside our door. As I got closer, the doorknob suddenly moved, like someone was trying to open it. Instead of panicking, I just called out that they had the wrong room. Immediately, I heard footsteps running away. I assumed it was a mistake, someone drunk maybe. I double-checked the lock and went to bed. The next day, it happened again. Henry and Sarah showed up out of nowhere on the beach. They were wearing the exact same clothes as before. That alone was strange, but I tried to ignore it. We didn't stay long. I told Henry we had dinner plans and left. He seemed overly eager for us to meet up later. Back at the condo, I looked down from the balcony and saw Sarah standing alone near our building, facing the ocean. A few minutes later, Henry came out from what looked like the base of our building. They had some kind of tense interaction before he stormed off and she followed. It didn't feel normal. That night, while we were out at dinner, Henry kept calling me. I ignored it. Eventually, I texted him saying we were heading back and going to bed. He immediately called again, then sent a message. "Let's meet before you get back. It's too early to sleep." I declined again. Then came the message that changed everything. "Don't go to your room yet." We both stopped walking when I read it. Vanessa looked at me, and for the first time I felt that something was seriously wrong. We hesitated, but eventually went back anyway. When we got to our door, it was slightly open. I knew I had locked it. Vanessa stayed in the hallway while I slowly stepped inside. At first, everything looked normal. Then I noticed the balcony door was open. In the bedroom, our suitcases had been torn apart. Clothes were everywhere. The only things missing were a pair of my shoes, Vanessa's bathing suit, and a photo of us that had been sitting on the dresser. We called the police immediately. We told them about Henry and Sarah, but those names turned out to be fake. There was no record of them staying in the building next to us. The phone number Henry used was disconnected. The police said it doesn't happen often, but sometimes people target tourists, gain their trust, learn where they're staying, and then break in when they know the room is empty. Looking back, all the signs were there. I just didn't see them. And now I understand what Vanessa meant. Being too nice isn't always harmless. Sometimes it's exactly what someone is counting on.